So the last meeting we talked about reaching out to the state delegation. I mean, they're following along with what's going on. I don't know if they've reached out to us specifically since we've reached out to them a while back.
Mr. Chair, through you and the board, to be completely honest, in my conversation with the state senator, indicated to me when I asked him what his plan was, he told me he didn't have a plan. The funding issue is the purview of the state delegation, not the purview of the town. And the town is supportive of the residents in the situation, as I said on the meeting that we had. We have provided information, we have provided resources. We have asked Brady Sullivan to meet with the Devenscrest Association. They have no interest in meeting. They've made it clear to my office that Devenscrest is not for sale. We've been trying to work on that. To say that the town is not supportive of the Devenscrest Association is not accurate.
I didn't say that.
Well,
I asked if the town had shown their support to our state delegation.
Support for,
The families at Devenscrest, state segregation.
yes, we set up a meeting, we provided resources. Through the chair, respectfully, and you talked about this at length at your meeting, the proposal or the request for this town to take Devenscrest by eminent domain is a non-starter. And as the town manager, professionally and personally, having been through this, it is not the purview or the scope of this board or this town to take that property by eminent domain. We do not have the capacity to do that, and you know that. The other thing is, if you look at the record, cities and towns do not get into the rental business for a very clear reason. They don't have the capacity to do it. Brady Sullivan paid $11.8 million for that property. If we were to go forth with an article to take it by eminent domain, this board would have to do the following. One, put forth $11.8 million as the initial offer. We would have to do an appraisal. The appraisal that we did on Depot Square, which was much smaller, was about $30,000. That isn't in the budget. I'd have to request from the board another $50,000 in initial legal costs. So now we're beginning to approach $20,000. If we were successful, I'm not a lawyer, I said this at the meeting, so everything I'm saying, I said at the meeting. There is not a standing that we're aware of where a municipality has taken, in this case, private property for affordable housing purposes, because the eminent domain has to be for all of the public good. Now, of course, it's of an interest to those that live there, and we sympathize with that, but the other 8,000 people, is that in the public interest for them? So, if we were successful, then at that point, the town of Air owned it. We're now in the landlord business. We would have to bring those units up to code. That's not optional. There's those costs, plus the relocation costs for the individuals. While we do that, we would still have to move them. And then, moving forward, we'd have to manage it. So, I am, through you, Mr. Chair, publicly, and I said this at the meeting, Connie, you know where I stand on it, that eminent domain is not a viable option. So I think that needs to be, that just needs to be taken off of the table. I cannot, having been at the last 11 town meetings, the hardworking people of Air, which Devenscrest folks are as well, fight tooth and nail over $5,000 to $10,000 expenditures. Right off the bat, we're looking at a proposal that could raise everybody's residential taxes easily $500 to $600. The state senator came down here, where's his plan? In this money he's talking about that he's sitting on, we don't have access to that. And even if we did, it has to go through the whole legislative process, the House, the Senate, and the governor. This is a horrible situation that these folks are in. That is not an easy solution. What is your proposal? I mean, what do you think we should do?
If I could address Mr. Pomperiano's comments, Mr. Chair. Because it appears that even though we held an hour-long Zoom, Mr. Pomperiano perhaps didn't hear any of the comments that we made in response to how Baldwin scared that he just expressed.
Mr. Chair,
Alderman,
Respectfully, I did not attack the gentleman, I don't appreciate the characterization.
I
We're
didn't
not-
say-
let's keep this tone
Thank
civil,
you.
please.
Thank
So,
you.
Mr. Sullivan, please, go ahead.
I stressed on behalf of the Tenants Association that eminent domain certainly is not the first choice. It is a choice of last resort, but it needs to be an option that's left on the table.
Given the timing of when everything would even play out doing that, you'd be looking at months before we would even be in the situation to start processing that. And
That's
at that
right.
point, with the number of days that are remaining until the first eviction orders are out, those residents would be gone anyway.
All right, well, first of all, let me correct the timing issue. Because the 27 days is the notice to quit. That doesn't mean the tenants are forced out of their apartments after 27 days.
Okay.
What it means is that the landlord may then proceed with formal eviction proceedings in the district court or the housing court. Those proceedings could take very well several months up to a year, depending on how they unfold. So, yes, we probably do have a couple months to work with. And I would hope that we're talking about a number of options in the meantime. We certainly want to see Brady Sullivan to continue to offer financial incentives as they've done to some tenants, although I don't know if that's been of any help to the 45 families that are part of the Tenants Association. It certainly has helped other residents that are at Devenscrest. We certainly expressed to the town that taking all of Devenscrest by eminent domain certainly was never even envisioned by the Tenants Association. We're talking about 45 families, not the 110 plus units that exist at Devenscrest. So the scope of what our town manager reports to be 11.8 million plus is certainly something much, much less than that.
So how do you bifurcate that from the rest of the property? Like, what's the I'm trying to understand, because you're saying like Devenscrest in general, which is the 110 units of.
I'm not saying Devenscrest in general, that's what I'm hearing from our town manager. We have 45 families, and I know that we've been working with the town GIS system to identify which buildings those 45 families actually live in. And there can be a taking building by building. But it would substantially reduce the cost to the town of any potential eminent domain taking. But trying to work with a plan is imminent for this board, because I'm getting the sense that the fallback position of the board is, well, we made the phone call to Brady Sullivan, and there's not much else we either can or are willing to do. I mean, if that becomes the case, we could very well have tenants from Devenscrest camping out on the town hall lawn, or trying to get some shelter as the weather gets bad in the Great Hall on the second floor. Are we prepared for that? Where are they going to go? I know that there was a similar issue that occurred over at the Casamana Motel. Different than our situation, but it involves people that are potentially looking to be kicked out of there. People that are of modest means, again, don't have many options on where to go. And I'm hearing that the town, at least through the Board of Health, was offering what is through shelters. Is that really the option that we're looking at? And do we even have shelters that can take all of these families? And are these families going to continue to keep their kids in our school district? So I'm looking for the town to step up and show support, number one. Number two, if you don't think there's been effective dialogue with the state delegation, then maybe the Tenants Association can help entice that. And together, between the town and the state, we can start to work on a plan. And a moratorium on evictions is another possibility. I know that Boston has one, Cambridge has one. They're still in effect. Are they going to come under attack? Likely, at the legal level. But it's providing some relief to those tenants in the meantime.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
If I may, that idea of the moratorium on evictions was brought forward. We did speak to town council about it, as well as the attorney general's office. There's not provision that we can, a section of neighborhood that we, or certain houses that we can, put a moratorium on evictions.
That's right.
So it would be like a town-wide,
Moratorium.
yeah.
Yeah. Is that being considered as a possible option?
I wasn't aware that we had looked at that.
Yeah. So, what did I'm sorry.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So what did the Attorney General say?
Well, the question that was brought forth to us early on in this process was, could you just do a moratorium on evictions in Devenscrest neighborhood? And the Attorney General's office said no. Then it was kind of pending in flux because of what's going on with the coronavirus, eviction moratoriums. In different towns, that was how it was posed to us, just that neighborhood.
So we couldn't do it for just the neighborhood, we'd have to do it as a townwide, which I understand, because otherwise you've got favoritism and whatnot. And the state has not extended the moratorium on evictions, correct?
Well, they have until the end of September, I believe.
October 3rd.
October 3rd,
Yeah.
and that's on the federal level or the state level? What's the state level done? I'm trying to get all these pieces, there's so many moving parts. Okay, and if I could, before I forget, so you're recommending of the 45. Now, the 45 could be one house over here, one house over here, 3 over here. It could be on various streets.
We'll know better shortly.
So the problem is even trying to present that to the town, because now the town is gonna be like, well, why'd you let, others go? Why didn't we do this as a whole? Why are we picking out this other town? Now you've got the neighbors upset, well, why didn't you do anything to try to protect me? So now you've got this thing with favoritism. The other problem, first of all, this actually makes me sick to my stomach, okay? I know that somebody's gonna hear that and go, oh, yeah, it does. It actually makes me sick to my stomach, especially after all that we have gone through in the past year and a half, okay? It really does. Right? So I want that clear, that as a human being, I am disgusted, and I am actually trying to figure out the best way, not just for the people that are being affected, but that it balances out for the whole town, because that's what we have to do. And you know that. You've sat here at this table, okay? You know that. And there comes the problem, because now for the landlords, every time we need to get something fixed, we gotta go back to town meeting. We can't keep calling up town meeting every other month because we've gotta fix the roof and whatnot. There comes another problem, and now the town's getting upset going, well, we're so worried about their roof and everything. What about the school that we need built? Therein lies the whole broad picture, and that's the problem I can tell you that I definitely have, because I can't just look at that one picture. I'll have to look at the whole scene. Okay, so it is heartbreaking. Okay, I will probably get really sick when I leave here tonight. Okay, so I'm gonna not do it now. All right, but I want to emphasize that's how upset I actually am about this scenario. Okay, we have lost ourselves in humanity, and we've learned nothing over the past 18 months. And now, now I'm just going to go off on a tangent, which we don't want me to do.
First of all, it's great to hear your passion, because we need people to show their passion. And the board's been very silent about this tonight. So to hear that you care goes a long way to the tenants, the families at Devenscrest. But if I may address one issue that you brought up, and this was also an issue that was brought up by our town manager, excuse me. And that is the town, if it were to take over some of the properties, right, becoming the landlord, so to speak. The town can do a taking and then deed the property to a nonprofit. So the town doesn't have any more management involvement after the original taking. And the nonprofit can deal with the repairs that have to be done. So I know that was again, a concern of the town manager, but it's one that's pretty easily resolved. As far as whether this would be a taking for just specific families or for the benefit of the public, these units would be taken to create affordable housing for the town. You happen to have some families that are ready and willing to be and continue to be the occupants of those affordable housing units. So it is a public purpose for our town as a whole. So I would hope that those issues of is this really a taking for public purpose, and can the town or a nonprofit be in charge of managing this going forward? I would hope that those are hurdles we certainly can get over. Again, if that option of last resort, eminent domain taking, ends up having to come into play. But if it's not on the table, we don't create the incentive for Brady Sullivan to do anything different than they're doing now. It becomes the leverage that the town can exercise to get Brady Sullivan to engage, number one, and number two, maybe to work over time, much more time than would be required during an eviction process, but to work over time with those 45 families of the Devenscrest Tenants Association to find other placements or state subsidies that will subsidize rent so that they'd be paying those market rents to Brady Sullivan, right? Paying what they're now paying, plus with a state subsidy to get them up to what Brady Sullivan is considering to be market rents. Without the option of last resort, we really limit ourselves as a town on what we can and can't do for these families.
So actionable items, I would propose we reach out to the state delegation with a
Include Representative Harrington. She was there. Where's she been?
Eldridge is there too.
Yeah. I know Eldridge has made a couple phone calls, but where's she been?
So my proposal is let's start there.
Can I talk?
To the delegation. Reach out to the state delegation. Find out what action or options we have through the state delegation in relations to whether it's funding that's been provided by the federal government, what other options there are within the state.
What about the town doing eviction moratorium?
I think that's our next step locally, so start with the state delegation immediately, and then for the next meeting, we can start reviewing that and what goes into that.
Well, the next meeting, the next meeting is on what day?
21st.
21st. So we really would have to make a decision on the 21st as to whether or not.
We could
So-
have a meeting next week.
We can have a meeting
Yes,
next
we
week.
can do that.
I keep my Tuesdays free.
Mr. Sullivan.
Sure. Prior to your next meeting, you should be able to identify which housing units the 45 families live in. So we have a finite idea on what properties are involved. And once we have that, we're trying to get some kind of an estimate as to what the cost of an appraisal would be for those particular housing units. If you will, I might suggest could be a third action item. We had a citizen step forward who was very facile with the GIS system for the town. And we have the listing of where everybody lives. We're trying to meld that together so we can identify the specific properties.
Okay.
Great. Thank you. And again, it was just great to hear the passion and support from the board tonight.
I hope this all works out.
Thank you.
Next item we have on the agenda is Class 1 license application from JP regarding trailer sales incorporated. Anyone here for that?
Yes.